This is the National Conference of State Legislatures, and really we are about strengthening legislators and legislative staff in their states, providing good, hardcore data and information and research, supporting us as legislators so that we can do a better job representing our constituents in our home states. There's about 5,000 members that are here in Minneapolis for this year's summit. One of the great things about NCSL is the opportunity to get to know and colleagues from other states to learn about what they're doing, both successes and failures, and so you can take those ideas back to your home state to implement them.
There are many challenges facing the states regarding infrastructure needs. Certainly budgetary issues continue to remain at the forefront of discussion. Healthcare, implementation of the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid expansion.
Transportation, immigration, healthcare, you can go down the list, and coming together as legislators from across the country, we all face the same problems. We are looking for solutions that are American solutions that result in good public policy. NCSL, our resolutions have to promote federalism, oppose unfunded mandates, oppose federal preemption, and support the notion of flexibility with federal policy. All of the resolutions here, transportation and healthcare, will deal with those principles of supporting the strength of the states.
Main Street Fairness, or the streamlined sales tax, or just allowing states to tax in the internet purchases and give the nexus. States already have a solution to this issue. We just need Congress to act so states can decide whether they are or are not going to tax the internet. A couple other issues, transportation, infrastructure funding. Also, one of the resolutions that was passed today talks about a local option. Let's give states the power in order to fix the issues back in their states. So a lot of the issues that we deal with here at NCSL really are states' rights issues, letting states do what states do best and run their own state, and let's get Congress out of the way so we can do what we do best and run our own states.
Deficit reduction is something that we're concerned about. We passed a resolution encouraging Congress on that, as well as a resolution that will encourage Congress to partner with the states as it relates to transportation infrastructure funding.
How important is that for the states?
It's absolutely critical that we have a federal partner that works with the states and not preempting the states or providing us unfunded federal mandates.
Cindy McCain and I are here to talk about the national strategies on sex trafficking. And I think when people hear about this, they always think about it happening in other countries, happening in Asia, happening in Mexico. But in fact, 80% of the victims in the U.S. are from the U.S. It's happening on the oil patches in North Dakota. It's happening in New York and Minnesota. And so that's why we really want to up our efforts to go after sex trafficking. And one of the ways we do it is with the law that's been supported by a lot of people that are here for the conference, which is to make sure that victims of sex trafficking, mostly young girls, are protected and they're not prosecuted. That's how you make the great cases against the people who are running these sex trafficking rings. That's how you make the cases against the pimps and the johns. And so we have a bill on the federal level that's making great progress, bipartisan, and we want to get it through.
What kind of a force can the National Conference of State Legislatures be in dealing with this?
Oh my gosh, this is so important to be here because this is where it begins within their own home states, is with the legislators.
This is an important legislation that provides the victims of human trafficking and necessary protections.
As a former state senator, this was probably one of the topics I dealt with the most when I was in Arizona, that around school choice. More importantly, we had already made the decision to have school choice, so the decision was, how do we ensure quality in that school choice? One of the biggest issues that we face when it comes to school choice quality is that fine line between government intervention and free market principles. So when do we tell a private school that they need to give all their students a state-mandated test? Several states do that. Arizona doesn't. We're kind of very much a hands-off. But if you're hands-off, how do parents then learn? How do they learn what a good school looks like?
I am on the Education Committee here, so we're going to be looking at some of the pertinent issues involving education, one of which is charter schools and the effects of charter schools, the advantages of charter schools, and some of the disadvantages.
A big issue in our state of Kansas is really education funding, K through 12, which is the largest portion of our budget.
I represent the city of Allentown, and the biggest issue in the city of Allentown, for me certainly, is education. In the past 4 years in Allentown, we've lost 400 teachers, about 20% of our population. At the same time, charter schools have increased by tenfold. And without making a political statement about that, I want to know how we can adjust to the rapid expansion of the charter school system, how we can, most importantly, provide our kids with the appropriate level of education, but also make sure that the charter schools are held accountable for the public dollars that they spend. I've attended some really fantastic seminars along those lines, and I know I will leave here with ideas that I can take back to Allentown and Harrisburg to hopefully increase education for our kids.
The topic here today is to talk about the importance of kids being able to read by the end of third grade. It's a huge factor as it relates to their future success in school as well as in the real world. There's a lot of information as it relates to by the end of third grade, if they're unable to read, it is a huge predictor of if they're going to be successful and get a diploma at the end of high school. There's lots of research supporting the importance of them reading by the end of third grade, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
This is truly a critically important issue, both as an issue dealing with children and from the perspective of education, simply because we haven't done as well as we could. There are enormous disparities in education involving young children. Third grade is an important benchmark, and it's critically important that children be proficient in reading by the time they get there. The question is, what are the means by which we get to that proficiency within that period of time?
I came here to learn about earlyhood child education initiatives so that we can help our youngest New Yorkers able to survive in our global economy and thrive.
How valuable are these sessions here at the conference?
These sessions are valuable because they have vital information and other foundations and models that states are doing. So it's vital to learn what other people are doing so that we can bring it back to our great state, our Empire State.
This is probably the most important thing state governments do, is educate children for the future, and reading is the foundation of every part of education. So it's trying to make sure that we have the best policies in place to make sure that everyone is reading by third grade, because all the statistics show if you're not reading by third grade, your chance of success later on in school are diminished greatly.
I chair the education committee in Wisconsin, and so listening and talking to folks on what they're doing on education funding, the standards, teacher accountability, all report cards, all kinds of things that are happening in the education arena. One state can learn from other states, and that's what this is all about.
We have what is called a high-quality pre-K program, but it is very limited. And so the idea is to gather additional information in terms of different activities that may be a part of that program, and then how we can continue to increase the funding.
Have you found the conference to be useful?
Sure, very much informative and educational.
The Common Core has been a divisive issue in the state of Wyoming, and there's been a lot of information, what I call misinformation, going on about the Common Core. So I'm here to learn, get some factual information, to kind of cut through the rhetoric and say, so I could better engage in the debate on Common Core.
The President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities is an advisory committee to the White House on cultural policy, and we've made increasing access to arts education one of our signature initiatives in the last 8 years. What we find is that when you bring the arts into high-poverty, low-performing schools, you see dramatic increases in culture and climate indicators. The schools become happier, more functional, more collaborative places, and you also see math, reading, and other scores go up, as well as increases in attendance and decreases in truancy.
We found, not just through this program, but around the country, that the integration of an arts education into a regular school curriculum with schools that are difficult schools, dysfunctional schools, has a very significant impact, whether it be attendance, discipline, achievement scores, parental and family involvement, has really raised the level of these kids. And this particular program, the Turnaround Arts Program, through the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, has made a particular difference.
A child needs a complete education, needs the opportunity to feed his or her soul as well as his or her brain. So this is very important to us because we want to make sure that students have the opportunity to investigate, to be creative, and for all of those juices to flow in them that gives them an opportunity to offer what they know. And And so one of the ways we know to do this is through the arts. We've invested in Arkansas in the arts, but not nearly enough. We've not been able to persuade enough people that we need to make it the arts just a regular part of being an educated person.
As well as on the minds of those policymakers.
The major issue is while we're expanding the access to care with both the Federal Affordable Care Act and some of the programs the state has done and the expanded Medicaid enrollment, the cost of health care continues to be a concern of state government and of the public in general. People are concerned that they might not be able to afford the care when they need it, and that's something we're trying to address.
I think every state is seeing a tremendous utilization of healthcare, and as a result, all states' healthcare costs are going up. The key for lawmakers is to learn the strategies to control those costs, making sure that people have quality healthcare and access to healthcare.
What kind of impact is it having on your state?
On our state, I think everywhere you turn, you're seeing a tremendous a cry out for more access in our state. We're a very rural state. We have 32 rural counties, and so for us, the cost of healthcare in those rural counties can be very challenging because of an access issue.
The Affordable Care Act is an important first step. It took care of some of the worst abuses of private health insurance so that you can no longer deny a person health care based on the insurance, that is, based on previous conditions, and that every child gets access to health care. So that's a beginning step. We still have more to go.
It's making some members of the legislature less interested in providing care for vulnerable Texans. Also, it's the reason why we didn't do a Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act, because of this idea that Medicaid is financially broken. But the reality is it's the best bargain you could ever have because each state has the ability to match their funds with federal funds, which allows us to cover more people. And folks forget about the fact that the aging baby boom population is the biggest threat, not providing people with health care.
Well, in Montana, we're looking at ways to reduce the rising cost of health care by providing services in the place where they are the most effective and the least costly, and that is in the individual's homes. We found that people do best when they can stay in their own homes, live in their communities, socialize with their neighbors, and go to their own churches. And so we have recently adopted the Community First Choice and Money Follows the Person, and those two policies actually incentivize a state with extra federal money to provide services to people in their homes, so like I said, they can stay in their homes. Those are people that are senior citizens and people with disabilities.
So in Colorado, the second largest portion of our budget goes to healthcare, followed only by education. And so right now we did expand Medicaid, and we are concerned about what the impact will be once the federal government is no longer covering 100% of the cost of Medicaid.
Certainly an important issue in our state right now is the discussion over health care reform and how we implement it in a way that works for Nebraska. And NCSL from the beginning has done a great job of keeping legislators informed about the policy decisions that we have before us and how we can move forward. There are a lot of issues around health care reform, including access, workforce issue, payment models, very technical things, but NCSL gives us the technical information that we need to make good decisions for our constituents.
I am an official appointee from the Virginia Senate on the Health and Human Services Committee, which I really enjoy. I came specifically to learn more about Medicaid expansion and some creative ideas that other states are doing.
One of the biggest issues is Medicaid reform. And I was able to attend the Medicaid reform session yesterday, listening to Arkansas and listening to South Carolina in terms of what they've been able to do. And I've been impressed with what Arkansas has been able to do.
Can that help you back home?
I think so. If we can get people to listen, of course, we have a Republican majority. I'm a Democrat. But I have a lot of years of experience in health. And I think that if we could get folk to agree on listening, looking at what Arkansas has done in terms of Medicaid reform, and we've had some discussions, I think we could make some progress in North Carolina. But the communication is going to be the key.
Well, there's a lot of issues that NCSL covers. It's good to talk with other legislators from other states and see how they're handling these issues. I would say particularly I'm interested in budgeting and public pensions and what other states are doing to solve those issues.
The state of Illinois has been dealing with a pension crisis for the last several years, so the information that I obtain here on how to increase revenues, how to stabilize our budget, to balance our budget, all of that information is extraordinarily important to me.
One of the biggest issues in our state right now happens to be the pension issue. We currently are tied up in court, and there was a session that was held here dealing with pensions and how states can look at how to solve that particular crisis. Rhode Island, we've had a number of lawsuits that have been filed after we went through and passed legislation a couple of years ago to try to clean up the problems we were having with our pension system.
Have you found the conference information here to be helpful?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I've had the good fortune to serve on the executive committee here at the conference, and to me, one of the best things about this is the interaction between legislators from across the country in order to come back with new ideas that we can take to our own state.
I would say that the economy is still the major issue in the state and in the nation. So I've been looking particularly for ideas about helping manufacturing and moving manufacturing ahead in our state. And I had a couple of workshops on that, and I'm very pleased with what I've gotten, and I'm going to be bringing that back to my state.
Growing the economy, jobs for my community, my district, learning new ways to kind of invigorate my local district, which is in decline. So things like the panel yesterday that discussed about investing in local communities. There was someone from Minneapolis that talked about neighborhood investment, and that was very enlightening. Doing things that are local, but finding ideas from other places.
The big issue in my state is the question around jobs and economic development. So what I came here today is look at ideas of what's happening in other states to see if we can borrow some of those practices from other states to try to do some things in Pennsylvania.
Has this been helpful to you?
Very helpful. I mean, it gave me a lot of great ideas about what we can do to incentivize jobs and how we can create opportunities for people.
We're facing being at the bottom of all of the graphs. We're number 49 in poverty, number 49 in education, and access and opportunities. And so the objective is to network with as many states as possible and look at innovative and creative ways in which other states have addressed those problems. And so that's what we hope to accomplish. And there's a good-sized delegation from New Mexico here.
All of the big issues revolve around jobs, economic development, some portion of tax incentive. My area expertise has always been elections. I was an election official for 27 years before I was elected to the legislature. So there has been some great meetings in regard to elections, to election equipment, how the equipment that's around all of the counties across the United States is becoming antiquated, and we have to have new systems. Plus, there's been some great seminars on what the projections for next year's election, and also just the method of operation, certification, recounts. It's been extremely beneficial to any of those who are on election committees.
As a border state, we have some severe challenges based upon illegal immigration and the problems arising out of inadequate border security in the state of Texas. Always public education funding, as well as health care funding, transportation funding, are going to be big issues. So everything that's important to the people of the state of Texas will be issues in the 84th legislature, and hopefully there's information on all those things that come out of NCSL, comparing our experiences and approaches with those of legislators from around the country.
The big issue in our state is really how do we better serve veterans? And so coming to this conference really allows me to hear from all the other states of what are they doing to really help veterans, especially when it comes to mental health issues.
What kind of information have you had here? Has it been helpful?
It's been extremely helpful. I learned Texas is doing some very exciting things online to help veterans get information, and other states are really helping expedite the application process for services.
One of the main information gathering points I would like to get here is ideas on funding transportation infrastructure maintenance, ways to fund that. We're having a shortfall in Idaho, and being on the infrastructure committee, visiting with a lot of people about what their ideas are and how we can address that issue of infrastructure in the United States.
Has it been helpful for you to be here?
Yes, got some good ideas. We'll take them back and see if they fly.
I serve on the legislative or the House Judiciary Committee in the state of South Dakota. I'm a representative, and also on state affairs. So I'm very interested in the major issues, corrections reform, juvenile corrections reform, death penalty reform, and those are the issues that they're facing my state that I need to get information on. And yes, the conference has been extremely helpful in getting model legislation and interacting with other legislators and other state representatives to get information.
The imprisonment of nonviolent drug offenders is quite expensive to incarcerate people. It's money that could be spent on roads, bridges, schools. And it's funny, it seems to be a bipartisan thing. A lot of more conservative legislators are interested in this issue. I know even in Texas and Mississippi and some states that are generally considered more conservative than Massachusetts, there's been some movement on criminal justice reform. So I think it's really an area where there's a growing consensus that, yes, we need to be tough on crime and incarcerate people who are truly violent and a threat to society, but where there are people who aren't as much of a threat to public safety, we have to be a little smarter in the way we're allocating resources and give people a chance who are sick, maybe with addiction, to get treatment so that you can turn them around and make them productive tax-paying citizens again rather than just warehousing them.
I came to that summit to learn more about how we can protect our environment and how we can improve our alternative for fuel. I'm a freshman legislator. I've been there one term, so this has been very educational for me because I'm learning how other legislators and states are dealing with issues of energy, environment, voting rights, and all those kind of issues, and just things, women issues. And it's always helpful to have a broad spectrum on how someone else may be answering it or addressing it, and then you can go back and frame your own thoughts on it.
I was recently elected in November, and then I just had a primary last week, so I'm wanting to learn as much as possible in education, energy, reducing crime in our communities. It's been a great experience so far.
I'm a new elected senator, and I've been told by some of my comrades that if I really wanted to find out something about what was going on the national level to bring back to the legislature, this was the place to be.
The conference has really been beneficial to me because it really is giving me an understanding of the issues nationally and how well we're doing in Vermont. And in fact, I'm mostly impressed by how well we are doing in Vermont with some of these issues like minimum wage, and in looking at our comparison to other states, that was a very informative piece of information for me.
I have found this conference to be enormously helpful. NCSL always provides great information for me to take back home as a legislator and to share with my other colleagues, and perhaps to develop some policy initiatives towards.
When we come from various states, there's always something you can learn from what the other legislators are doing. So I think whether it's issues of agriculture or it's issues of sex trafficking and all of those things, I think you gather quite a bit of information and you find out what sort of legislation these people are doing. So you may not know the fullness of it, but at least gives you an idea what you can go back and take a look and research it better to see what you can do, and likewise to maybe assist in those areas.
Well, these conferences are always valuable. I always take away new things. I just had a conversation with a lady from Arkansas that was talking to me about term limits, which I found very valuable. Networking like this and conversations that you have with other legislators from other states that have already implemented plans and they've either passed or failed, have been successful, those are the things that I take away the most. Learning about energy issues, about women's issues, for me is paramount. And then I sit on the Governor's Council of Special Education and Disability, so I'm always looking for new ways to help with that community in Alaska.
Most valuable, it was very interesting on the international track to share perspectives about what is happening, what are the challenges and issues, and not only from the Canadian Alberta perspective, but also from the American perspective, and then other delegates from across the world.
I certainly came for a whole host of issues, but the most important part for me, believe it or not, is the networking aspect of this conference. Many of the workshops that I attended, and many of my colleagues can concur, the Virgin Islands is not part of the map. And so it's one of the things that I want to do is bring awareness about the Virgin Islands and the fact that we have many similar situations and challenges as many states and territories so that we can be more inclusive.
Have you found the conference helpful?
I have found it incredibly helpful. Everybody's so wonderful. Like the NCSL staff has been superb. I love the array of workshops and subjects that are being covered. And I'm right now on my way going to the women's legislative part of it. So I really am very happy with everything that I've seen and experienced here.
One of the reasons that brought us here from Uganda is to learn the dynamics in the energy sector for purposes of our country's energy security, accessibility and independence.
Have you found the conference helpful?
Very much so, very helpful.
We have over 27,000 staff throughout the country, and I'm very proud to be representing those staff today. We play a vital role in the legislative process. In fact, I'd say we're the heart and soul of the legislative process, and our job is to make it easier for legislators to do their jobs. Today we're honoring the staff who were recognized by their peers, by their individual staff sections, who are being awarded today for their outstanding dedication and work throughout their careers.
We have 25 awards that are being given to legislative staff and staff offices to recognize their achievement and hard work in making and strengthening state legislatures. NCSL is critical to legislative staff and their ability to do their jobs and to better serve their legislatures.
I've been coming to NCSL for probably 25 years now, and it's a great organization that it really helps kind of bridge the gap between the two parties and helps teach and magnify bipartisanship and working together. What I find the most valuable for me is the opportunity to talk with people about the swirls and eddies of politics and how they dealt with that in terms of the issues in their state. So there's always the policy issues, but then there are the political issues as to how you accomplish things, how you create coalitions, how you build the ability to get things done inside the legislature, and that's the part that's kind of hard to identify exactly how it happens. But you can sit down and talk with a fellow legislator that has done something in their state. You got to ask them, well, how did you deal with this set of folks that had some resistance? That's what I find most valuable about NCSL. There are a lot of great meetings and task forces and all of those kinds of things, but it's that individual ability to talk with legislators and kind of get the nuance of what happened, not just the policy.
State legislatures are the democracy labs of our country. We know how to do it right, even at a time when Washington isn't functioning as well. In our state legislatures, we are functioning well. We're working together, and we're working at a local level to solve the important problems that are facing us.
The best resource is the website, ncsl.org.